Good morning, all, and welcome to Forging the Falcons. Happy Labor Day. My name is Scott Kennedy. I will be your host, and Nick Kendall will be joining us from Seattle very early in the morning for him, but we are coast to coast in the morning, and it is game week. I hope everyone has had a good holiday weekend and has stayed somewhat dry. I know it's been a wet one. I myself have not been able to stay that dry with being outside all day on Saturday and Sunday, so I'm just happy to have on some dry socks. It's game week, so it's an exciting time to get into the show. And some of the things I want to talk about, I want to review. The last time we were with you was Wednesday, and we were pretty passionate about some of the players that were not yet on the 53-man roster and a couple that were on the 53-man roster. And a lot of those have changed. So it's kind of like this was the plan all along. Sit back, be patient. We'll get into that a little bit. We'll start breaking down the Saints a little bit. We'll do more of that on Wednesday. My plan is to do another show on Friday as well. And let me bring in my Facebook crew here before I forget. Since I've already forgotten, and get them in here because we want to bring that crowd in here. Atlanta Falcons on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. That's a good crowd. We get a lot of viewers over on Facebook, so I want to make sure that they are here as well. Also, Bleacher Report came out with their first mock draft, not their first, but one of their latest mock drafts has the Falcons picking number 1 overall. You may or may not agree with that. I wrote an article the other day saying, I disagreed that the Falcons, how they finished the Falcons last, because they were moved down. And that was NFL.com, I believe, or ESPN, one of the two, because they moved the Falcons down from where they had them after the draft. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have moved this team down from what I saw in the preseason. If you want them at 32, okay, so be it. We'll get into that a little bit as well. Appreciate the love coming in already. Dom coming in with the heart. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And he says, good morning, Scott and Dog Nation. Seen Auburn won this weekend, Scott. Have a great day, buddy. Yeah, they play Mercer, something like that. It wasn't exactly a juggernaut. I was actually considering trying to get to a game. I haven't been to a college football game in forever. And then I looked at the times and the prices, and I'm like, you know what? I'd just soon go get an 85-inch 4K television as opposed to going to a game. KB82 says, what are your thoughts on the Florida State LSU game? It was nice to see Jaden Daniels play well after his messy departure from Arizona State. KB, this gets our friend Kenny Booker. Kenny, I haven't watched a down of that game. Yesterday was I was in Chattanooga for a 9 a.m. soccer game. I was back in Alpharetta at 1 o'clock for baseball practice that went from 1 to about 4:30, and then I came back and just chilled. It was a long weekend, so I haven't watched any of that. I watched a bunch of the games on Saturday, including Georgia, a little bit of Florida, and checking a little bit on Notre Dame and Ohio State. But I didn't watch any of that Florida State LSU game. But if it's one you think I should check out, I will. I've got plenty. There's lots of on-demand stuff. So appreciate y'all coming in, hitting those like buttons and everything. So again, like I said, appreciate you doing that and sharing everything. Bleacher also has an early rookie grade class. So they've graded the rookie classes so far. How have they looked? Falcons got a good grade there, and I think that's fair. Despite Drake London being limited in the preseason, I think we all still have pretty high hopes for him. But let's get into some of the big changes that happened on Thursday. After we did our show, we talked a lot about one player in particular, and that was Abdullah Anderson. Big nose guard, big defensive tackle, could play 3, could play inside. And I said at the time, I'm like, he wasn't just, a guy that should make this team. He was good. He was a guy that I want to see in the rotation. He was good at 3 at the 3-4 end, and he was good at nose guard. And what happened with him was just kind of a procedural thing. We see a lot of teams do this where it's like, listen, we call you into the office on Tuesday before cuts. Listen, we want you on this team. You've got a spot on this team, but we have to cut you for now until we can get these guys moved to injured reserve. Wink, wink, nod, nod, and then he's signed back, on Thursday. And that's what happened with him. And it happened with a few of the guys because the Falcons moved 5 guys to injured reserve, which means they will be out at least until after week 4. the two biggest names on there, one's big and one's notable, because Jalen Mayfield is not necessarily a big name, but he's notable because he's still not contributing the way you'd want your. He was taken high third round last year and forced into starting action, and has been battling a back injury and was sick, and it still isn't clicking for him, and that's notable. But the big name on there was Deion Jones, former Pro Bowl linebacker. A huge salary cap hit. That's why the Falcons haven't been able to move him. He's got a $20 million salary cap hit and a $24 million dead cap hit. So you're hoping, hey, I'd like to trade this guy, and someone will pick up his $9.5 million base salary and his $5 million roster bonus, and maybe I can save a little cheddar on the salary cap. But nobody's going to pick that up. And if you cut him, it actually costs you an extra $4 million because he's got a $24 million dead cap hit. My question, and I said this before, that when Calvin Ridley when I watched Arthur Smith talk about Calvin Ridley, I'm like, that dude's done. He's not coming back. I didn't get that feeling with Deion Jones until this latest move. Now I wonder, is Deion Jones ever going to play for the Atlanta Falcons again? He was out there in preseason. He played in preseason, the final preseason game. There hasn't been any news. They're not going to talk about it. Did he re-aggravate something, or is it just, he's not ready? And if he wasn't ready, he didn't need to be out there. This is a $20 million player. He didn't need to be out there before. Is this kind of a, just sit out? We can't cut you, Deion. You cost too much. So just sit out, get your mind right, and maybe try and come back. I don't know. One thing I'm positive of, though, is he will not be in a Falcons uniform in 2023. It would not surprise me at all if he didn't play again this year. So that was the big news. A couple of the other players that were moved. This was last week. Marlon Davison, he's kind of the prior year's Jalen Mayfield, high draft pick. Injuries, this, that. He admitted after first year he wasn't a very good pro, didn't take it that seriously, and it didn't, it just hasn't clicked for him. So no surprise there. And then John Fitzpatrick, tight end, and Isaiah Oliver moving to the injured reserve. It's not surprising, it's just disappointing. It's disappointing for him. It's disappointing for the Falcons. He was playing very, very well as one of the nickels before he tore an ACL, and that was last year. And for a twitch player like a cornerback, that can really be a full 18 months before you're fully 100% recovered. So he's not even 12 months into it yet, and was out there doing drills and playing, but he's not full speed yet. Another month will do him some good. I'm looking forward to seeing him come back, hopefully 100%, because he played really well towards the end of the year. And it was like he found himself. We've given Isaiah Oliver a lot of stick for, not being very good at corner. Move him inside, changes the looks a little bit, change the speed of the game a little bit. You need to, there's not as much time for guys to get more separation as there is on the outside with the ball coming. So he found a home there. And if he could be a productive nickelback, that's very good for the Atlanta Falcons. Terry Ocean Boy Martin coming in. Looks like he's got some Falcons flying there. I think it's a little hard to see. But glad you're here. Welcome back, Terry. We've missed you the last couple of weeks, so welcome in. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being here for sure. Some of the other players that, and then Kenneth comes in and he clarifies. I might be the only one here that doesn't know the Florida State LSU game. Came down to the last few possessions with a super exciting play that never happens. All right, I'll check it out. And Mark Schrader, he's coming in. He says, good morning, Scott. Well, good morning, Mark. Cheers to you. Appreciate you being here. Good morning in Texas. So happy Labor Day for everybody. Hope everybody got to sleep in just a little bit. I have a 15-pound male black cat that has decided he doesn't want to sleep in my son's room anymore. So he kind of walks around. He decided to bring a toy up into my bed and play with it from about 5 a.m. until my wife grabbed him by the back of the neck and kicked his ass out of the room. So it wasn't a great night's sleep. So I hope everybody got to rest a little bit. The other two guys that were re-signed as part of that, I mentioned Abdullah Anderson, was Colby Gossett. again, there were three guys on here that you're looking at the initial cuts that were veterans you thought that could really play. Probably more than that if you count the running backs, but there was better depth and not as many positions available at the running back. But when you look at interior offensive line, swing tackle, that type of thing, Colby Gossett was a guy you think, okay, yeah, he should be a depth piece on this Atlanta Falcons team. And he was brought back as when they made their 5 moves. And then Nick Kwiatkowski, the linebacker, veteran linebacker, he was also brought in. So the team, the roster is coming together, pretty well, considering all things considered. Now, if you go to Spot Rack, and I'll put this in the link because I reference it a lot, and I'm sure the crowd here that pays attention and is here, they understand that I've put this in here several times. They have a metric on here, just a list they call it active salary. Let me see what they call it. So yeah, active contracts. So an active contracts, that means how much of your money is actually on the field. That's your active contract. The number for the Falcons is 111 million. Okay, well that's a lot of money, right? But your max salary cap is 208 million. So you're talking about this team with roughly half of its available money on the field. Where's the rest, you say? Well, as you know, Matt Ryan has a huge dead cap number. Julio Jones has a huge dead cap number. Dante Fowler still has a dead cap number. Their salary cap available, which is good. So that number could rise to about 121 million. And then Deion Jones on reserve, and the amount of money that's now on injured reserve is pushing $27 million. The vast majority of that going to Deion Jones. So when you say that this team is going out and fighting with one arm tied behind its back, it's not an exaggeration. It's half a team that they're putting out there. So I think that's one way to help temper expectations. That said, I think Arthur Smith is a good coach and does a good job. And Dean Pease, I know he's a good coach. And I think Terry Fontenot has done a very good job of scouting and finding players off the scrap pile for cheap. Let's take a look at the defensive line, for example. Anthony Rush, nose guard. I think he was signed off a practice squad last year. Was serviceable last year for the Falcons, and he was deemed important enough that he was kept out of a lot of action in the preseason. He looks like a big upgrade over Mike Pennell. Tyler Davison last year on the line. Those guys are both gone. And you've got a backup in Abdullah Anderson, who's better than anybody that was on the line last year. So you got 2 players in the middle of that defensive line. They're both cheap. I bet they're both they're both cheap. I bet they're in the 3 million range at much. Let's see what Spot Rack says. Anthony Rush, 1.25 compensation. Abdullah Anderson, I can't even find him. He's so low. He may not have been added. Troy Anderson, Abdullah Anderson's 895. So you're talking about $2 million. And those guys look good. We'll see. We will see, but they look like they can do a job out there, which, not every player has to be Grady Jarrett. Not every player has to be AJ Terrell. If you get a group of hardworking guys that know their scheme and can do a job, let your stars make the big plays, you're going to be okay at defense. Drop back a little bit to the linebacker position. Actually, I'll stay on the line. If I move outside to the ends, you got Grady Jarrett. Okay, I can live with that. They signed Matt Dickerson last week. He hasn't done much in the NFL, so we'll see how if he's making the active roster. Timmy Horn had a good camp on the interior, but Taquan Graham is a player I've talked about a lot as a player who looks like he has really taken the next step as a rookie. 4th rounder, I believe, out of Texas. Good size, good athleticism, was overmatched last year. Okay, he was a 4th round pick as a rookie, a 5th round pick as a rookie. I can live with that. But you're not necessarily even expecting a player with that draft pedigree to take that next step, especially as quickly as he has in the second year. At times he looked like the best player on the field for the Atlanta Falcons defense as a second-year defensive lineman. I'm excited about that. I really am. I think you You should be too. Keep an eye on Taquan Graham. You look at your inside linebackers. You've got Michael Walker, Rashawn Evans, Nick Kwiatkowski, and Troy Anderson. Now, I'm extremely high on Troy Anderson. However, I was extremely high on Richie Grant last year. Richie Grant, they almost call it, I've seen some of the other Falcons beat writers calling it kind of getting the Dean Peace treatment, the rookie treatment, where he was either held back or didn't quite get it all at once while he was learning a very complicated system. It's even going to be more complicated for an inside linebacker that's kind of the quarterback of your defense. So I have high expectations for Troy Anderson, and I'm wondering if I need to temper them just a little bit for his first year. The way we did with Richie Grant. Doesn't mean he can't have a really good career. It just might mean he might not do a lot of things other than special teams as a rookie. I hope not, because he's got an upside and athleticism that some of these guys just flat out don't have. Again, I don't care if it was Montana State or if it was Alabama. If you are a conference player of the year at the collegiate level on both sides of the football, you're a football player. And this guy is an athlete too. We know about the corners, AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward. I was very adamant last year about 3 players on defense, and the ones it's 2 for sure. It was Stephen Means and Fabian Moreau that I was like, you cannot go back into. It may have been Duron Harmon, but it was 2 for sure. That you cannot go into the next year, with these guys playing key roles. Fabian Moreau was just awful for the Falcons last year. And Stephen Means, God bless him, just no production from the edge position. So Arnold Ebiketie, insert D'Angelo Malone, Lorenzo Carter coming in. Lorenzo Carter, I kind of have the same expectations I did for Dante Fowler. Fair. If he gets 5 or 6 sacks, anything more than that, I think will be gravy. And then just by default, Arnold Ebiketie will be an upgrade over Stephen Means. Again, he didn't have a sack, 2 quarterback hits all season, maybe 1 tackle for loss. I think just impossibly poor production from the edge position. That Ebiketie could probably beat those numbers in the first game of the season. So I'm happy with the defense there, the upgrades as far as where you're building. Richie Grant, Jalen Hawkins at safety, Eric Harris backing him up. So there's some good pieces here. A lot of the guys that are older than 26 years old, a lot of the veterans are on 1-year deals. So they're building this for, there's some hungry guys looking to earn another deal the next year. That's a good thing. There's a lot of salary cap money that's going to be available. And we'll see where they come in with the draft pick next year. So the chat, y'all are awfully quiet. So help me out here. I need a second. So what questions do you have? What are you looking forward to? Do you have any questions about the Saints? Any questions about the players on the team? Something like that. Come in and hit up some questions. I'm going to take a big slug of coffee. So I mentioned the resources that were going to be available to the Falcons next year. There's going to be a ton of money. If you go to Spot Rack, I love Spot Rack. This is a very similar concept to what I proposed to CBS and a Fox way back in the day when I was working with, and SI for that matter, when I was working with some bigger media companies. And well, these boys went out and did it. So congratulations to them. If you look at the estimated cap space for the Atlanta Falcons, it says 43-1. Okay. Yeah. That's just scratching the surface of what's available. Calvin Ridley is still on there. There are lots of moves. Deion Jones is still on there on a cap hit of 18.5 with a dead cap of 5.3. That ain't happening. So there's 25 million available right there. Anything they don't spend this year, they can roll over to next year. So if they've got 10 million, they can actually roll that over. That's not a concept that Falcons fans are familiar with. What do you mean we can roll it over? Usually we're trying to find more. Chris Lindstrom will need to get paid, but at 13-2 for a guard, it shouldn't be that much more. Considering the position he plays, he's very well compensated as a guard already. Who was the other player I was looking at? I mentioned Deion Jones. Jake Matthews, I'm hoping they don't just keep – he's got a he's got a $33 million cap hit next year. They're going to have to restructure that. They will clear up a lot of money, but Jake Matthews is going to end up being the next Matt Ryan, where they just keep pushing that number farther and farther back until one day you have to just eat a $30 million dead cap hit. But they can't go into next season with a $33 million cap hit at left tackle. That isn't very sustainable. But you go through this list. Oh, and Marcus Mariota, that was the other one that I was thinking of. At 14.5, if he has a really good season, 14.5 for a starting quarterback is reasonable. That's okay. You almost hope that you want him to play into that contract and keep it, but he's only got a dead cap of 2.5. So that is, $12 million of available cap space right there as well if you decide to move on from Marcus Mariota. That's why I call it a one-year deal. All these guys that were brought in on one-year deals. I don't care if it says 2 next to their names. Check out the dead cap number and the guaranteed money for next year, and you'll know how long these contracts actually were. So getting into that, I want to say the available resources, because Bleacher Report came out with a video of the mock draft for next year, and they have the Falcons number 1. They have them number 1 overall, and they have them taking Bryce Young. So that's going to be very interesting depending on the quarterback play. Has Desmond Ridder shown enough that you would pass on Bryce Young and go for Will Anderson in that situation? If Marcus Mariota plays his way into a position where you want to keep his $14 million contract next year, or maybe even sign an extension, then you're probably not drafting number 1 overall. All of these things. And, we got to see a little bit of this the first weekend of college football. And that is a good time to bring on my co-host, Nick Kendall, who is now joining us, who was on the road this weekend as well. Got to see him, a smiling face with his dad behind home plate with the St. Louis Cardinals. So, Nick, how are you, my friend? I hope you had a great weekend.
I did have a good weekend. I am pretty darn exhausted. Didn't get in till about 11:30 midnight last night, but made it, and now ready to talk some football. And man, what an excruciating week of college football for myself. The Hawkeyes come out with a win, but my God, the offense is as bad as I can ever remember in my life. It's unbelievable. Thank God the Broncos have an offense now, because if I had to go one more year of good defense with horrible, pathetic, gouge your eyes out offense for my professional team and my college team, I might have gone insane.
Yeah, I was checking scores again. I was on the road all weekend. I got to see some of the afternoon games, and so when I'm watching one of the games, I'm flipping through scores, and I'm like 5-3. I'm like, who hit the 3-run home run in the bottom of the 8th? You got a pitching duel going on there with Iowa.
Yeah, it was the baseball game ended up 8-4 with more points on the board than what the Hawkeyes did. So rough. We got Dom coming in. Good to see you, Dom, over on Facebook, saying, do you guys think the Saints passing game will be good this year? Oh man, I think it's easier to say no than yes in this one, but you talk about a team that has a bunch new on offense. I mean, Jameis Winston's back and he looked good in a limited sample size last year, but their wide receiving core doesn't impress me, and they don't have Sean Payton anymore. So, and he's been, master of puppets there for a decade plus. So I think it's easier to say, no, they will not be good. I think more likely league average. Jameis Winston is still supremely talented, pretty young overall too, considering how long he's been in the league. And he can go nuclear. He can put up some points, but he's just, propensity to throw the ball to the other team as well. So I'm going to go with no on that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at passing yards. That can't be right. 150, 180, 110 last year. And then he must have caught fire, because I remember him doing really well and then he got hurt. Okay, that makes sense. 405, 369, 304, 361, 376, 373, 323.
And in the week 1 game, he only had a very limited number of yards, but he had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
against the Packers.
I feel like I must be looking. I don't remember him being that good last year.
He put up
they
some
had
yards.
the worst passing league. They had the worst passing offense in the NFL. So am I looking at the right? So last year it was the worst passing offense. Total yards. There's a 164 in there, a 190. But maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. But I thought they were last in the NFL last year in total yards. There it is. It's offense total yards. That's why. That was total yards. Okay, so 210, 209, 267. That makes more sense. 81, 174. Um, but you're right. That's Michael Thomas is coming back. I'm very interested to see where he comes, where he fits. Is he really back? Because if he is, then he's a very good weapon. Skyline comes in and says, I think Jameis is overrated for no reason. So for no reason, you think he's overrated, or you think he has been rated for no reason? No, I'm just teasing. I don't think Jameis Winston is rated very highly. I don't think he's well thought of across the league to call him overrated. There was kind of some snickers and stuff when he was re-signed. I was like, okay, you missed out on Deshaun Watson. Before Cleveland jumped in there, it was probably the Falcons or the Saints. Before the Cleveland Browns said, "Hold my beer," it was going to be the Falcons or the Saints, and thank goodness it was. I let him be up in Cleveland in the AFC. As far as I'm concerned, he didn't. I don't want that distraction. I like the game to be about the game. I don't want it to be about other stuff. And right now, Cleveland Browns are about other stuff.
Yeah. Also, Nick, real quick, the Saints passing offense, they also lost their left tackle, Terron Armstead, who's been one of the best blindside protectors in football over the last 6-7 years. So there's just too much newness, unknowns, and players without pedigree or proven pedigrees in the NFL level, at least, to make me think that the Saints passing offense will be good. And they might be average. And again, Jameis Winston still has a lot of talent, but I'm losing Sean Payton, the lack of difference makers at wide receiver. I need to see it again with Michael Thomas after missing a whole year. Offensive line is good, but you lost your left tackle. I would not be buying stock in the Saints offense right now.
Yeah, and I'm looking, if I remember right, Trevor Penning ended up getting hurt, didn't he? I mean, I'm not saying that that's a negative or a positive, because he's a walking penalty, but and he's a rookie and all those things, but but the thing is though, Nick, is I brought up PFF this morning just because I don't know the Saints the way I know the Falcons or the Broncos or some other teams. I know some of them. And I'm starting to look and do a sort, and of players that played more than 500 snaps last year. Not the Ryan Ramczyk, he's graded okay. But then their second highest graded player on offense was Taysom Hill, and their third is Jameis Winston. Alvin Kamara didn't have a great year last year. Michael Thomas, we don't know what we're going to get. However, Nick, then you flip over to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And the defensive side of the ball starts getting a little bit more interesting. You've still got Marcus Davenport. You've still got Cam Jordan, who has just killed the Falcons. And if you go back and listen to me complain about that trade that Dimitroff made for Julio Jones, Cam Jordan was one of those players that went like 2 spots after the Falcons' original pick that they trade up from, not to mention the other 4 high draft picks they gave up. And they were 13-3 the year the year before they traded for Julio. They were 13-3. They never reached those heights again. They had a nice run for a Super Bowl, but they were never the complete team that they were, and they gave up 5 players to do it. Anyway, Cam was one of those guys that very easily could have been a Falcon. Onyemata, Pete Warner, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, Shai Tuttle, PJ Williams, they're loaded. They're loaded on defense, Nick.
Yeah. No, they are loaded on defense. They did just trade Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's been one of the better nickel players.
That's right. Yep.
In football. They couldn't come up with a contract agreement with him, so they traded him to the Eagles for a 4th or something like that. I mean, God, every time there's a veteran player, even if he's talented, unless he's a true demigod player, he's going to get less than you think in a trade, especially because you have to pay them and they have less years of control. But their defense is going to be good. Again, it's another thing with newest. Dennis Allen is still there, but he's not just the defensive coordinator anymore. His role is going to have to change. So we'll be curious to see how it changes. Cam Jordan, another year older. Marshawn Lattimore, up and down player. I loved Marshawn Lattimore coming out, but he's got a hamstring issue every other year. So we'll see with the Saints. I would not be buying stock in them right now. I feel like the NFC South, still Tampa Bay's division. After this year, wide open.
Yeah, I still see him as a bottom third team, but is this a team that the Falcons can sneak out a win? Can sneak out a win on at home on opening day? It's possible.
I definitely think so.
I want to give a shout out to a sponsor of the show. It's their live sports on TV. Live sports on TV, and let me just put up the banner here real quick, also, so you can see it. Live sports on TV. That's all it is. Now, you get approached for things all the time, sponsored content. 99% of it is spams. They're frauds. But these guys contacted me, and I checked them out. I said, would you run a sponsored content piece? I'm like, let me look. And I'm like, yeah, this looks legit. And I'll tell you what. If you can see my bookmarks up here, number one here on the left is live soccer on TV. That's like number one on my list. It hasn't been working that great. So I use something like this all the time just to see what sports are going to be on. And they have other shows too. So it's like, okay, what soccer games are on, what times, what channels. Just go to live sports on TV and you can click on NFL, and they've got the lines in here also. And you see where the Falcons are. It's a little bit hard to see, but they're plus 185 at home. We'll be on Fox. And plus 185 means if you bet 100 and the Falcons win, you'll get paid 185. The minus 227 means you've got to put down $227, risk it to win $100 on the Saints. So they're a pretty heavy. And a big thanks to livesportsontv.com. Like I said, it's something when I check them out, I'm like, yeah, this is something I'd use every day. So thanks to them. Check them out. And let me see. Let me get rid of this banner real quick. But they don't seem like this is for the Falcons fans that think they're going to win 7 to 10 games. This is one you need to win. This is one of those games you need to win at home against the Saints. Opener. Healthy as you're going to be most of the season, minus Deion Jones. But again, I started off at the top, Nick, saying I'm not sure we're ever going to see Deion Jones in a Falcons uniform again.
Yeah, if you could, talking about trading veterans for compensation, I mean, what do you think you get for Deion Jones? A 6? Maybe because it's a contract. You can't even trade him.
You can't, because he's owed nine and change in base salary, 5 in a roster bonus. So he's got a $14 million salary that comes with him. You have to get somebody to pay at least 4 for that for it to even break even against the dead cap. So your dead cap number goes from 63 to 83 if you traded him.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through it before you got in, Nick, but the Falcons only have $111 million on the field out of 208. That's by far the worst in the NFL. Ryann comes in. He says, if Winston has time against our D-line, it looks like he will, he can pick us apart. I wrote a story last year when he was named the starter. I'm like, this might not be good news for the Falcons. His career rating against the Falcons is better than Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees. I mean, Patrick Mahomes. It's better than all those guys, his career rating against the Falcons. So to say he turns into Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes against the Atlanta Falcons is legit. That's not an overstatement. His career rating against the Atlanta Falcons is actually better than the career ratings for those players. So I agree with you, Ryann. He's good. I think the Falcons should be better on the pass rush. I talked before, I don't know how much Troy Anderson is going to play, but I'd like him on the field in third down situations, in coverage and or delayed blitzes, just with his athleticism coming in. And then you've got an improvement on your edges. With Lorenzo Carter, D'Angelo Malone, and Arnold Ebiketie. I'm like, that sounded wrong. As soon as I said, I got Troy Anderson in my mind. Ebiketie, you've got upgrades at edge compared to last year. So 18 sacks hopefully will look like a blip when you start looking through. How many sacks did the Falcons have every year? You're like 30, 27, 28, 27, 18. What the hell was that? Is that a typo? So that's kind of what I'm hoping happens, and they get back up at least into the high 20s this year. So we'll see. And Boy Bangley, YouTube, YT comes and he says they're starting Trevor Penning now. That's what I thought. He's not listed on their depth chart. And I thought, as soon as I saw that, he got hurt. Someone needs to do a quick Google for me too. So, Terry Ocean Boy Martin comes in. He says, yeah, Cam looks nice against Atlanta. Cam looked good against a lot of folks, honestly. at times. No knock on Matt, but Matt wasn't a mobile threat. He's a very stationary quarterback, and still is. Atlanta is more athletic at the QB position. Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, definitely more athletic. That doesn't necessarily mean better. At the end of the day, you still need to be able to make the throws to complete passes on 3rd and 8. Accuracy still matters, and it remains to be seen how well the Falcons are going to be able to move the ball. They weren't very good. Was Matt Ryan, it was very polarizing. The truth was somewhere in the middle. Was Matt Ryan, worthy of being the highest paid quarterback in the league last year? Hell no. Was he the reason why the Falcons weren't winning games on a consistent basis? No. There were so many other problems to fix before I got to the quarterback as being the biggest problem. And I'll say that about this team too. There's other things. You say, okay, you can fix 5 things on this team. What are they going to be? As far as what are the biggest holes? Now, yes, you say, give me Patrick Mahomes, I'll take him. But, there's bigger holes on this team as far as talent goes. Safety is a problem. We'll see how, can Caleb McGarry and Eli Wilkinson at left guard, can they hold up? So you're unproven at the edge position. I mentioned some improvements, but there was nowhere to go but up. They were rock bottom last year. Depth at corner, the running back position, maybe we'll see. The wide receiver, is Drake going to be a guy? There's lots of other problems before I say, Marcus Mariota is why we're not winning games.
Yeah, and I looked it up just because called upon. Trevor Penning's on the short-term IR. Tore a ligament in his foot during the preseason finale, so he's going to be out.
Somebody. He tore somebody by kicking somebody's face mask. I on my YouTube channel, if you go to the front page of it, let's see, I think I may have deleted it. I'm like, you might be on here. I had a banner, but if you go to the front page of my YouTube channel, I got 405,000 views on Trevor Penning, calling him the nastiest lineman in the draft. A lot of people go in and say, this guy just looks like he's holding and tripping and blah, blah, blah. I said, I didn't say best. I said nastiest. And he is the nastiest. He's a dirty SOB. I couldn't put myself to put dirty in the title, the dirtiest in the draft. I felt a little bad about that. Let's see. And Shane Sargent comes in on YouTube, makes a really, really good point too. Losing Sean Payton is huge. It is a huge loss for the Saints. So I think we can upset them week 1. Go Falcons. Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. This isn't a road trip to LA to take on the Rams. That one looks, no game's unwinnable any given Sunday, et cetera, et cetera. But this one looks, again, like I said, if you want to be a team that's going to be in playoff contention, knocking on the door of 500, maybe better, you need to beat this team. You probably need to beat the Panthers at home. You need to get those wins to take care of wins like this one. And Terry says this is a brand new team. It is. There's so many changes, and credit again to Terry Fontenot for what he's been able to do with limited resources. Again, $111 million salary cap. Some people are going out there with rollover money that have more than twice that money on the field. Nick, I think you said, what's the salary cap? 240? And I was like, well, maybe for some teams who were able to roll some over, but it's 208 for the poverty teams. And for the Atlanta Falcons, it's about 120 because of all the money that they have lost. So it is a brand new team. Quarterback, and the brand new, what I want to see, Terry, I want to see a brand new Caleb McGarry. That's what I want to see, Nick.
Yeah. Brand new Caleb McGarry. We have been seeing a brand new Caleb McGarry in preseason. And even if he's just, average to slightly above average for a first round pick, that wouldn't make him average, because if you look at the right tackles across the league, it gets pretty dried up after 6-7 names. So if he can put himself in that 12 to 13 area, that's fine. It's not what you want for a first round pick investment, but given his level of play so far and the fact that it's more important to have 5 okay to good players rather than elite players, because it's one bad player will sink a whole unit. That'd be great for Caleb McGarry this year, especially with the Jake Matthews being a fine left tackle if you close your eyes about the contract.
Tony Wright coming in on YouTube. He says the nastiest O-lineman, and this is what we're talking about, nasty as far as like the best, the meanest, the baddest, when bad is good. Lineman in draft is 3rd round right tackle Abraham Lucas. Have you heard of him, Nick? Who the Seattle Seahawks drafted? Tony, I was pounding the table for Abraham Lucas a lot. He wasn't quite my Spencer Brown. So my 2021 guy was Spencer Brown, who ended up going about 100 to the Bills and played at a Pro Bowl level at right tackle for the Bills. If I had the choice between them, I would have taken Brown over Lucas, but Lucas was my guy. Abraham Lucas was my guy, especially looking at the two teams, because Nick and I are going to jump over to Mile High Huddle in about 5 minutes to talk Broncos for breakfast. Looking at the two teams who both needed right tackles, I was all about Abraham Lucas for sure. And then, and then Clee says, I wanted Lucas for the Broncos. Yeah, I was very consistent on both shows. Yes, you need a right tackle. Abraham Lucas is going to be the guy. We'll see how it pans out. The early returns there are pretty good, though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's looked pretty good there for the Seahawks, and we'll get an eye at him week 1 for the Broncos. I know we took Abraham Lucas many times in our mock draft simulators leading up to the draft. So we'll see how it plays out for him. A nastiest, I don't know if I'd categorize him as the nastiest in the draft.
Again, like I said, if you say who's going to be the best offensive tackle coming out of this class? Is it going to be God? I forgot his name, and his picture's right there on the header. Kid out of Alabama,
Evan Neal.
Yeah, Evan Neal. So could he be the guy?
I've
kind of forgotten about him. I haven't heard much about him in the preseason at all.
That's not a bad thing for an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Sometimes you also have a Feedy who's been doing okay there for the Panthers as well. I think he'd be my
NC State.
Yep.
It's hard when you get to be my age. It's hard to take short-term memories and lock them in as long-term memories. So it's like, all right, flush, new class.
Yep.
Who was that guy from where? And again, a non-normalized comes in and says, I wanted Lucas for the Falcons. Yeah, I was all over those guys. Braxton Jones was a player we liked, and then as a developmental guy, I think he went to the Cowboys with I've forgotten his name too. Matt Wessler.
Walesko.
Matt Walesko. The tall lead. He was like a skinny 6'7", 305.
Yep.
Looked like he could just block with one arm. He looked so long out there. I don't know what his measurements were, but he certainly looked long. So. It's almost time to start breaking those things down again. The Senior Bowl is right around the corner. It's time for college football. Got to watch some really good players this weekend, so we can start hitting up some draft stuff as well. But we got to get out of here. So appreciate everybody chiming in and coming in. And when you come in after the fact, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That way you get notifications so you can come join us live. And as always, hit the comments. It's easier for me to follow up on YouTube than it is on Facebook. So come over to YouTube, youtube.com/C/Scott Kennedy. Come on over there and leave a comment, and Nick and I will answer. If it's a question for Nick, I'll send it over to him. And I'm in there all the time. I'm pretty obsessive about responding to that stuff. But we've got to get out of here. We're about to hop over to Broncos for Breakfast on the Mile High Huddle channel on YouTube. We will see you Wednesday as preparation for the Saints is in full swing, and we can get a better idea. And we'll really start breaking down the preview of the matchups and the teams on Wednesday. So any last words, Nick, before we move over?
We'll see each other again on Wednesday with the Falcons channels, but game for the Falcons fans to watch this upcoming Saturday, Florida versus Kentucky, 2 probable first-round quarterbacks with some tools, and Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. Maybe 2 guys you want to keep in the back of your head for April Falcons fans.
Yeah, that's good. Again, if you're 7 and 10, if you're in the middle again, those two might be available.
Richardson might go higher.
What now?
Richardson might go higher than that.
Yeah, I know. But again, that means someone else comes down, though. Then CJ Stroud might come down, and Bryce Young may come down. So, having those guys play really well is good. It gives you more options towards the top. So. Appreciate everybody being here. We're going to hop over to Mile High Huddle, and we'll see you in a few minutes. And again, we'll see you Wednesday at our regular time, 9 a.m. on Forging the Falcons. So until then, we'll see you next time.